Welcome back to another OhmLab tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about something that I honestly just kind of adore, just the idea of and having the ability to use this stuff at my whim. We're talking about impulse responses, and I know it's a bit geeky and a bit nerdy and a little technical for a lot of you out there, but hang with us through this one because it's only a couple minutes long and it could completely change the way that you process sounds and even make music in general. Because if this speaks to you, this opens up a whole new world of customization possibilities. You can come up with truly unique stuff this way. All right. So, what is an impulse response? I think if we were to sum it up in a single word, it would be a shape. Okay, and it's simply just a shape. It's the shape of a room, of a space, of an environment that a sound is being played in, and that affects the way that we hear the sound, how the sound behaves. Um, it's not just a space or a shape of a space or room, though. It can also just be the shape of a sound, and then we can use that to influence another sound, similar to how an LFO works in a sense. Um, so without trying to describe this in just words, let's put this all into motion here so you can actually see and hear what's happening in real time together. Okay, correlate the two a bit. Now, I want to show this to you in Logic specifically just because a lot of people are under the impression that with Logic Pro 10, we've lost the ever-loved impulse response utility that used to be bundled inside of Logic Pro Studio. And now that we don't have Logic Pro Studio anymore, people just kind of assume that a lot of these things went away, and that's not necessarily true. We're going to load up an instance of Space Designer. Okay. Now, for those of you following along that are not using Logic Pro, don't worry about it. Your DAW probably has a convolution reverb unit in it. If you do not have a utility built into your machine or your DAW to create IR files, you can run a quick Google search and find a free utility to do so. And you can follow along just as easily then. All right, so for those unfamiliar with Space Designer, is simply just a convolution reverb unit. It's incredibly powerful though. And I'll show you where the IR utility lives. It's actually right here, the IR sample button, this small disclosure triangle. It opens up this small little drop-down menu or pop-up menu, and we're just going to choose Open Utility, and we'll start a new recording. And sure, I guess mono is fine for right now. Again, this is just an example, and we're going to show you how to do two different things. Okay, first we're going to show you how to capture the space around you. Okay, we have a built-in mic as our audio in and built-in output as our audio out, and what we're going to do is we're going to arm our track, and then we are going to generate a sine wave sweep in the room, and it's going to basically measure the environment as it does that. So here we go with that. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we'll just call this test IR. We need to save it for us to be able to process the actual file. And now what we're going to do is called deconvolve. And what that does is it knocks out the guts of this sound wave. Okay, this waveform here, it's going to basically take everything out of the center of it and just leave the shape of that waveform in place. Okay, and that's what we're actually going to use as our impulse response. Okay, so now we have our sound in line here, and you can see we can zoom in and you can see exactly what it looks like. And what we're going to do is we can now audition it. So as long as we have it enabled, we'll hear what a snare sounds like. Playing through that, and let me just change our input outputs again so we can actually hear this here. and a wood block. Oh. Okay, and you can hear that this is actually going on for a really long time. So let's just do this. Let's start at the beginning here. And I have no idea how long we really want this. We'll just say 0.6 somewhere in there, and we'll crop this. And let's go ahead and create a space designer out of it, and we'll call it test IR. That's fine. Okay, and it tells us, hey, the file was created. And we'll say, okay, great. I'll show you where that is later. Now, that's all well and good. But what if we want to do something a little different? Something kind of unique. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our, let's do this one in stereo. Okay. And instead of recording a space around us, let's bring in a sound. Let's do this. Just made this the other day. This nice little dust. Sounds like this. Okay, it's very subtle. And if you have your volume down right now, you probably can't really even hear it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to isolate just one little area here. And we'll crop it, okay? Because that's actually a pretty darn big range. So next thing we need to do is, well, we can audition, just like we did the last one. Here's a snare. Okay, now you hear, of course, that it wasn't just one snare hit this time. It was a bunch, because each one of these little spikes is controlling the response of the sound that we're processing. That wood block sounds pretty cool. All right, so let's just go ahead and keep moving on, and we'll call this one Dust. Okay, now what have we actually done? Let's get back into Logic. And let's load them up. And again, this is our piano on its own. Okay, very basic stuff. And now we're just going to load it up. You can see our stuff in here. I ran a test earlier. That's what dust test is. So let's check our room space, test IR. And without. And with. Okay, so of course it's not the greatest reverb that's being applied. Here, let's listen to just the wet. It's not the greatest, but it was quick and easy to make, and it is unique to us. Okay, so that's what this one sounds like. Let's load up the other one. This one is called Dust, and this is using the dust atmosphere that we just used. Let's listen to just the wet. Okay, so as you can hear, obviously, it's changed it quite a bit. And you start thinking about processing sounds with reverb in a completely different way when you start thinking about the shapes that could be influencing it instead of just the space, okay? And like I mentioned earlier, it's similar to an LFO. An LFO is something that is a shape and it's influencing other sounds, but you don't necessarily hear it itself. And it makes you think differently about sound waves in general. And getting through that idea of using an LFO as a modulation source can help you grasp other concepts like frequency modulation synthesis, for instance. So take that same exact idea and apply it to reverb, and voila, you can now unlock all sorts of potential and opportunity within impulse response samples. So that's how you make them your own. You can create them from a space that you're in, or use a sound and use the shape of that sound to influence your music. So we hope that you found this helpful and intriguing. And I hope that you really do go out there and try to capture some own spaces on your own, or some of your own spaces. Sorry, I'm having a difficult time talking today. And try creating unique IR patches out of different types of sounds. And don't just use a sound as it is. Stretch those sounds out, warp them, turn them into something new. Then just take a small snippet of that. Crop it inside of an impulse response utility program of some kind, and then bring it into your reverb unit and process your sounds with it. You'll be surprised by what you discover. Guarantee it. Thanks for stopping by. As always, if you have requests for future tutorials, please do let us know. Leave us a comment below or fire us a message, and make sure you visit all of our wonderful social profiles around the World Wide Web. Great seeing you, folks. Talk again soon. Cheers.